this is what the status quo wants. The status quo wants the ability to rewrite history. As a matter of fact, when the final days of World War II were wrapping up in Europe, the Nazis were busy burning the concentration camps, trying to do away with any trace of their disgusting handiwork, but it was still there. Even though the Nazis at one point considered themselves to be the possible winners of this global conflict, because they didn't worry about just how atrocious and inhumane their actions were in Auschwitz and Dachau. They simply continued with the Psychom B and the gas chambers and the mass exterminations because they thought, we're going to win. We'll rewrite history. We'll overlook these unfortunate circumstances. But it didn't really pan out, did it? You see, even though the winners like to think that they can rewrite memories and rewrite history, memories have a way of burning themselves into the psyche, into the collective consciousness. Memories have a way of niggling their way into the foreground, which is...
You got your name back.
Oh, okay. Wow, I got my... Yeah, I did. I got my name back. Oh, all right. Fair. But the main point I was trying to make was that no matter how hard you try to forget, forgetting is impossible. Oh man, I got sidetracked. Let's get into manners. All right, so what is etiquette? What are table manners? If we understand table manners to be a set of protocols, a set of rules to be followed in certain social situations, dinner parties, etc., then we realize etiquette belongs to a certain esoteric body of knowledge. Etiquette is inherently inclusive, which is to say, if you were to be dining with somebody and they burped in the middle of dinner, would it be fair to call them disgusting? Would it be fair to say that they didn't have table manners? I mean, if you were somebody that was partaking in the power dynamics of the status quo, if you were someone that was involved with the daily ins and outs of capitalism, then yes, you would consider them to have bad table manners because they are not participating in your system of protocols, in your system of, how should we say, inbred ethics. Let's call it that. Let's call it inbred ethics, because the reality is that this body of table manners was literally propounded by Renaissance writers writing how-to pamphlets at the dawn of the invention of the printing press, of the Gutenberg printing press in Germany, right? So in reality, we have a situation where etiquette is really propounded by the bourgeoisie, because remember, the only people that were able to write at that time, the only people that had the leisure to have their own room and a pen and paper, those were the bourgeoisie. Those were the individuals writing the etiquette handbooks. Those were the ones involved with their own, how should we say, inbred ethics. So, which is to say that table manners are a machination of the capitalist machine of oppression. And that was the main point that I was trying to make. Any questions?
So what you're saying is that manners are a spook.
It's a little bit more nuanced than that. What I mean to say is that manners can be understood as a system of rules that reinforce the solidarity within the group. Which is to say that manners are the identifier that allow you to verify whether or not that individual is part of the bourgeoisie or not. In essence, etiquette is a way of keeping the gatekeeper. How should we say? No, let me word it a different way. Etiquette is the gatekeeper to the bourgeoisie, right? Let's put it like that, right? So for anyone that wants to engage in the delusion of social climbing, of attaining wealth and entering into the nouveau riche niche, right? Of the new rich bourgeoisie, for any of those, they first have to pass through that gatekeeper called etiquette, right? So in essence, what I'm saying is etiquette is a system that helps to perpetuate the status quo. I've been asked that before. Yeah, I have. Very briefly though. I haven't really read too deeply into Stirner. Do you have any works in particular that you'd recommend? Ego and its own. All right, I'll check that out. I'll check it out for sure. And I'll give you a recommendation as well. I just recently finished reading the Hegelian dialectic of the master and the slave, and that was really, really interesting. The Hegelian master-slave dialectic. I suggest you look into that. By the way, I wanted to piggyback off the point I was referring to in terms of table manners, in the sense that table manners are so relative to each culture, which is again more of an indicator as to why table manners are so arbitrary and so nonsensical. Like for instance, in ancient Greece, it was considered polite to burp during a meal. And as a matter of fact, in modern China, it's still considered polite to burp during a meal. And if you don't burp, the host of the household sees that as an insult, because to burp is to indicate that the food was good and that you enjoyed your meal. And if you don't burp, you're basically telling the host the food was garbage, right? So then that's Chinese etiquette, right? And then Western table manners would indicate a completely different thing. And then you're left with like something, you're left with your hands tied. You're left with thinking, okay, what is the right and what is the wrong? And the true answer here is nothing is right and nothing is wrong when it comes to ethics, because each of these groupings of protocols are again simply meant to act as gatekeeper for each of the respective bourgeoisie in the different cultures that we referred to. If I did start a YouTube channel, what would the name of the channel be? That's a good question.
Shakespearean dialectics.
Oh, dude, I like that. Shakespearean dialectics. I fucking like that, dude. Because that would open up the doorway for me to be as eloquent as possible. Like, because people know people know what they're clicking. If you click Shakespearean dialectic, you're gonna get into something eloquent and articulate. And I would love to fill that niche. I've noticed that there are some people that do. I've seen some really high quality YouTube producers like Veritasium and company and Vsauce. So I'd be in good company, but there's just not enough of like quality YouTube. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an aggrandized view of myself like that, man. To be honest, I don't know. I have to think about it.
I mean, you can get paid for verbally decimating the bourgeoisie.
That is a valid point. That is a valid point, man. I can't argue that. Can't argue that. But fascist. The irony here is, ultimately, the audience that I would be reaching would only exist in an echo chamber. and it would just be a circle jerk, really, where I would only be talking to people that agree with what I'm saying, and nothing would ever change. So, like, I would just be engaging in this self delusion that I'm doing something, but I'm really not, and it's almost like masturbatory, really. I don't know. Maybe I just do it ironically as a joke, and then see where that takes it, right? Like just as like an elaborate troll
Yeah, man.
that gets out of hand. All right.
Just latch on to debunking Sargon of Akkad or some shit. It's not that hard.
I've thought about that, dude. I thought about that. There's a couple of YouTubers that I've thought about debating like that ANCAP, that anarcho-capitalist. Like, what the fuck is that, dude? Like, that is complete and utter baloney, dude. How do you mix together anarchism and capitalism? That's like oil and water, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, anarchism seeks to decommodify, and capitalism needs to commodify everything. So how do you reconcile the two? Ultimately, it just doesn't make sense to me. So whatever. I'm pretty sure some of you guys are familiar with some ANCAPs in here. So like I always tell people, like, if you really like anarcho-capitalism, just go to Somalia. Like, that is a perfect example of anarcho-capitalism. No laws, organizations kind of setting their own rules, and you have the most disgusting living standards known to man. You know. Well, yeah, I guess you're right. It's not really helpful, but certain ideas just seem so irreconcilable. Like for instance, teaching a science class where you're talking about creationism and evolution side by side as if they were two competing theories, right? Like that alone is an idea that just, to me, doesn't make any fucking sense. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's irreconcilable. The same notion with this idea of anarcho-capitalism, where you have a situation where it's free market, but somehow egalitarian. Like, dude, it just, if you have a free market where you're gonna have a situation where the minute a group gets guns, that group is in charge, and you have warlords. Somalia, like, there's no, you get what I'm saying, though, right? Like there's examples of anarcho-capitalism, and in the world today, right? Like Saipan, for instance, is another example, and these examples show us just how depraved anarcho-capitalism can be. Think of this, right? Let me give you an example. It's like playing the game The Price is Right, but with reality. That's literally what anarcho-capitalism is, where the price is right on everything. You know, like, oh, water, that has a price. Oh, human life, that has a price. Oxygen, you got it, that has a price. And that's what capitalism is. That's what it intends to do. That's the most efficient thing for a capitalist to do, which is to neatly put everything in existence into a spreadsheet, and to have every single element in existence commodified, so that everything fits into their economic, all-encompassing system, their interpretation of the world. Think about that for a second. Do you want to be a number on a spreadsheet, or would you rather have your inarticulate humanity, something that can never be commodified, let loose, run wild, without ever having to dealing with commodity culture or playing the prices right on reality? Like, you have to think about these things, right? Say no to commodification.
So, speaking of commodification, what's your opinion on pineapple pizza?
Ah, man, that's another one of those things that's irreconcilable. But I guess some people like it, man, and that's weird. So I guess you could say that pineapple, like Hawaiian pizza, is a lot like anarcho-capitalism. Some people think it works because they think they've tried it and it tastes good to them. But the grand majority of us think that Hawaiian pizza is fucking nasty, dude. You know what I mean? Like pineapples on a pizza, dude. Like, what is that, dude? Pineapples are meant to be eaten cold, not like steaming hot out of the oven. It gives them like a weird texture.
What about Swedish banana pizza?
I haven't tried it, to be honest. Swedish banana pizza. I have to look into that. Does anybody here play PUBG?
What's
Play
that?
what?
Does anybody here play PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds? Nah, dude. It's not. It's not. It's actually.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It's very anti-capitalist, actually. It's very ANCAP. It's very libertarian. Like you go your way, you know, you make your choices, and those choices define who you are. Yeah, I'm gonna get on it now. No, I'm still gonna be on the server. I'm just gonna be having like FPS Tourette's every once in a while. You know how that goes? Like, oh fuck shit, you know, like what I like to call first person shooter Tourette's. No, yeah, I get you, man. I get you. No, but I'm to answer any questions. The best biscuit is a biscuit that is produced using the least amount of resources and energy cost, but with the most tastiness. And that tastiness would have to be ascertained in double-blind studies with many thousands of individuals to basically get a wide data set in order to verify which biscuit was in fact the best tasting biscuit made under the most efficient conditions. And with that in mind, you have yourself the best biscuit.
What if the
And
tastiest biscuit is really inefficient, though?
then what you have is a situation where that recipe for that biscuit would need to be kept in a top secret, you know, confidential folder, dude. You know, we can't have inefficient biscuits, dude. You know what I'm saying? Because inefficient biscuits leads to inefficiencies in the production chain. You know, and in this globalized automated communism that we're referring to, what you want most of all is efficiency across the board, and that means certain concessions need to be made. Yeah, and that means, you know, no English muffins. You know what I mean? No crumpets. You know, new biscuits.
Are amazing.
What
They
about
would they probably
sourdough?
be called, but they probably be called like eco biscuits. You know what I mean? And if you're not eating eco biscuits, you would be seen as counter-revolutionary. You would probably be rounded up and re-educated. You know, through whatever means, you know, depending on how many times you've committed the infraction of eating the inefficient biscuits. Like I would imagine in this system, English muffins would be contraband, and if you're caught with that contraband, there's a heavy chance that you'd be looking at gulag, perhaps, you know, like as a sort of like therapeutic re-education.
But English muffins are just flour and water, basically.
They are, but the heating process involved is very energy intensive, which is why like what we're looking at is more like a cracker. You know what I'm saying? That would be called a biscuit, you know, like a pseudo biscuit. And everybody would kind of like be, you know, grumbling to themselves that it's not real biscuits, but it's the concessions that need to be made. But remember, this is at first, right? It's a stepwise fashion. Once we've ironed out all the kinks and everything, and all of the industries are set up to the maximized efficiency, then we can start enjoying better biscuits. but there are going to be times of austerity, and this would be the initial phase. I'm not kidding. I know it sounds weird, but it's, think about it. Like us living now, we would be the generation, the transitional generation, the generation that has to deal with, you know, English muffin contraband. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I'm willing to pay that price. 'Cause I fucking hate English
So what
muffins.
about regular bread?
Like Wonder Bread?
No,
Ooh,
like just
like
normal baked
actual
loaves
bread.
of bread, like
Flour, water, yeast. in the
baguettes
oven.
and stuff.
Well, I mean, this is purely speculative, but I personally think that in a system that's striving towards 100% efficiency, even though 100% efficiency is technically unachievable in terms of, you know, physics, we know that the law of conservation of energy tells us that 100% efficiency is impossible because there's always going to be heat dissipation. However, if we can get to as near 100% as possible, you're going to have a situation where Wonder Bread and baked bread would be contraband. Because why have small individual ovens when you can just have communal ovens, like one large communal oven for a city? And if the brown shirts come into your house and they find a recreational oven in your house, you might be looking at some hefty fines, dude. Maybe even some chemical reindoctrination, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is the new system that we'd be working with, a system that is unflinching, unwavering, but benevolent. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like capital punishment or anything, but you are looking at maybe like a year or two in, you know, in indoctrination classes where you're taught to eat the right bread. And they would obviously destroy your home oven because that's inefficient. Again, you want to have one centralized oven as opposed to hundreds and hundreds of individualized ovens.
But what if someone's art is making these bread and biscuits, and it's like it's their calling, you know?
Right,
Shouldn't
then
the communist society allow them to pursue that art?
I understand where you're getting at, and it's a good point. However, I would venture to say that that person would have to petition the Central Bakery Union to so that he would be allowed to work at the bakery. But
What-
the very idea of
Hey,
him making his own bread. You
Someone
know,
else was saying that they have something to add to this.
yeah, go ahead. No,
What
it's
if the
just
big ass-
what's it?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't this
on and go.
focus on
Sorry.
efficiency essentially the way that a capitalist functions?
Yes, but the capitalist system is striving towards efficiency within a closed system, so that it maximizes their return on investment and their overhead, right? Or minimizes their overhead, rather, right? Overhead is the price that goes into paying the salaries of the workers and maintaining the facilities, and et cetera, et cetera. So in a capitalist system, since you want to minimize your overhead, you're going to pay your workers as little as possible, while at the same time seeking to maximize your profit. Right, so that's the difference within capitalism as opposed to the system I'm talking about. There is no profit motive in this new system. Like, people go to work doing what they do because they love what they do. Think about RuneScape, right? Like in RuneScape, a lot of people use bots to do all the boring shit like fishing and, you know, mining or whatever. You're not going to do it on your own. You're going to automate it. And then you do the fun stuff like exploring, you know, dungeon running, whatever. You do that actively. You get what I'm saying? In a similar fashion, you're going to have a situation where all the mundane jobs are going to be automated, including bread baking. And then that bread baker might find that they have a latent proclivity for doing physics research, you know, and they might end up being physicists. Who knows?
Okay, so you talk about these centralized things like bakeries and presumably other manufacturers, right?
Right,
What
right.
If those places break down?
Okay.
What if the
Right. So like if the one bakery breaks down, like what would be the contingency? Well, you see, that's the beauty of having this system that runs itself. You would also have self-repair, right? In this system, quotas are the only things that drive the economy, right? The economy is not driven by profit, it's driven by demand, right? So it's not going to be a matter of like, oh, you know, the bakery broke down, we're not going to fix it. No, it's like the bakery broke down, but PET, we need to fix it because of the demand that needs to be met, right? So that would be the response to that. That things would get fixed on a case by case basis, but most likely it would be a self-regulated system that fixes itself. Because and let me explain why it would be most likely automated. Human beings have a tendency towards efficiency. That's why we built the abacus, right? We can count naturally, but why do we build an abacus? Because we're lazy. We would rather have a machine do it for us. That's why we invented the calculator. That's why we invented the computer, because we want things to be done as quickly as possible and efficiently as possible. And the next logical step is to have machines do everything. We take a step back, relax, enjoy existence. Star Trek, basically. But it's not guaranteed, man. The one thing that always terrified me about Star Trek was whenever they would talk about the Third Great War before they joined the Federation. So according to the Gene Roddenberry lore of Star Trek, before Earth joined the Intergalactic Federation, they underwent a Third World War, one of the most calamitous global disasters ever to hit humanity, where the nations of the world used the most horrifying weapons of destruction on each other. We're talking the entire gamut from thermonuclear to biochemical and everything in between, dude. Right? We're talking Pandora's box being open on the world. Okay, so according to Gene Roddenberry, according to his speculation, right? He says in Star Trek that before we can have this final utopia, we need to nearly destroy ourselves. And I hope he's wrong. I hope to God that he's wrong. I hope that I never have to look upon the horizon and see the mushroom clouds and the bright atomic lights lighting up the night sky. I hope not. Because that fucking suck, man. Nature's beautiful. As a matter of fact, Carl Sagan talks about nuclear winter. Okay, he talks about this idea that if enough nuclear detonations happen simultaneously, a thick enough cloud of nuclear ash would envelop the upper atmosphere to the point that it would block out the sun for an estimated 10,000 years, right? So could you imagine a man-made ice age for 10,000 years? I don't know about you, but I fucking hate the cold. I don't want that. So that's why I hope Gene Roddenberry is wrong. Let's learn to get along.
I prefer the cold to the heat because I live in Florida.
Sweetwater?
North Central.
All right. Well, Florida's nice.
Too
But
hot. Especially during the summer.
I hear you, but I personally don't want to have to deal with, a nuclear winter. That the very notion of having to deal with a nuclear winter, it terrifies me. It really does. It chills me to my bones. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a strategy game called DEF CON. If you haven't, you should look into it.
I've heard of it. I've never played it though.
It's one of the most horrifying games I've ever played.
Yeah, that's
And
the RTS about global thermonuclear war, right?
Yeah. If it's made by Introversion Software, and arguably it's one of the most accurate modern depictions of war on a conventional scale that's ever been made. Because if major geopolitical powers ever collided on the battlefield, it's not going to be, the major tank battles of World War II and the Battle of the Bulge where, there's bravery and, firefights that make it to the movies and, people talk about it. No, it's not going to be any of that shit, dude. It's going to be impersonal, at a distance of thousands of miles. It's going to be a guy in an air-conditioned trailer in the middle of the Nevada desert controlling a remote-controlled drone. That's that's the face of modern combat, dude. It's not heroic. You know, it's actually been turned into a video game. It's fucking disgusting, dude. As a matter of fact, the drone operators fly their drones using Xbox controllers.
Wait,
Why aren't they using keyboard and mouse?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
much more
'cause-
efficient.
Yeah, because they're fucking console plebs. That's why. PC Master Race. I'm sorry. PC Master Race.
Actually, a joystick is better for being able to control something precisely.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the stakes here are being ignored because we're talking about a situation where like modern war is fought in a bunker with a guy, part of missile command, pressing a button after he's been mandated by a sociopath in a suit to destroy humanity. Like that's modern war, dude. That's modern conventional war, which is why I hope that modern conventional war never ever fucking happens, dude. Because there's no such thing as a limited nuclear conflict, dude. There is no such fucking thing. What's up? No, of course not. As a matter of fact, I believe that the missiles of the world should be repurposed for space exploration, and nuclear warheads should be repurposed for energy, for nuclear energy production.
Wait, so you're saying you don't want them to get rid of them, but
I mean, there's no need to do away with all this good technology.
basically want all of them
No, as in
as
repurposing it would still be disarming yourself from nuclear weapons.
No, not necessarily. Like, let me explain. I don't remember what year it was exactly that the U.S. and Soviet Russia made an agreement to never use nuclear weapons in outer space, but it was part of one of their nuclear non-proliferation treaties, and that was a big mistake because nuclear propulsion technology is actually one of the fastest methods of getting from point A to point B in outer space. So we basically hindered our ability to explore the cosmos by saying we can't use nukes in outer space. So what I'm saying is the nukes that we have now, we can actually use them by opening up the old Daedalus program that we used to have. I think that's what it was called, the Daedalus rocket project that used nuclear propulsion. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going off memory here, but yeah, like we could use those nukes. I'm not saying disarm, you know. I'm saying repurpose. Use and continue producing and repurpose. Use those nukes to get to Mars. Use those nukes to get to the moons on Jupiter and Saturn.
Boy,
What do you
we're
think?
not talking about repurposing nuclear weapons. We're talking about should nuclear weapons exist at all, and should countries be able to use them at all?
And I'm saying yes, they should, because that's what's going to get us to Alpha Centauri, nuclear propulsion technology. And let me explain how. But let me. I know,
No,
but let
the
me.
question is, should they exist as weapons?
Yes. Well, no. Well, here's the thing. They need to exist as weapons in order for that nuclear propulsion technology to work. Because let me tell you how it is. It's basically a large disc at the end of the ship. And then what you have is in the center of that disc, a little hole that shoots out a nuclear warhead. The nuclear warhead explodes. The explosion pushes that ship forward. So what you're literally doing is what you do in Team Fortress 2 when you aim down at the floor with a bazooka as the soldier to jump higher. That's literally what you're doing with the ship.
But doesn't that do damage?
Very poor way to do any type of nuclear propulsion system. If you've looked at anything that NASA has looked at all,
But it works. It works. It works, dude. It's Newtonian physics 101, dude. Look, man, all I'm saying is that all technology is like a sword. It can be used for either ill or good.
It cites Shakespeared for physical information. That doesn't work at all.
What's up? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said you're the type of person who cites Shakespeared for physics information. That doesn't work at all. And it's
Dude,
if it did,
dude, I'm not
very
citing,
simple.
but I'm not citing Shakespearean prose to back up my statements in science. I'm citing an actual project that NASA spearheaded called the Daedalus Project that hinged upon using nuclear propulsion technology. Sorry, Project Orion. Thank you for correcting me. Okay, and what Project Orion used was it literally used nukes. Like it used literal nukes, which is to say that you need the nukes in order for that to work. So what I'm saying is, yes, you need nukes, and yes, you need nuclear weapons. And not only and because nuclear weapons shouldn't only be used in antagonisms against enemies. Like you can use nuclear weapons to defend against asteroids if you shoot out the asteroid early enough in its orbital path. Obviously, if you aim a nuke at an asteroid right when it's about to hit us, you're gonna have fucking many thousands of miniature asteroids pelting the Earth like a shotgun bullet. What I mean is, if you aim a nuke at an asteroid when it's like hundreds of thousands of miles away, then you have a very real chance of diverting the path of that asteroid. So there's very real beneficial applications to the use of nukes. It's not just using it to flatten out a city.
All right, saying that the current system of nuclear weapons work, don't you think there should be a better propulsion system than just using a nuke in its current state, just fling it towards it something, instead of just like disassembling them and using them for propulsion in a more efficient way?
Dude, I completely agree with you on the notion that this system of using nukes to propulse the ship is inefficient. Of course it's inefficient. It's what we have. And I would 100% support the development of newer, more efficient methods of propulsion, like maybe warp travel, or maybe the ability to engage in some sort of ion propulsion. Look, man, I'm open to suggestions. I'm not saying that it only has to be nukes, but what I'm also saying is we know that propulsion system works, and it's goddamn fast. Like it's fucking fast. Like it's like no other. As a matter of fact, with the Project Orion projections, they said that a trip to Mars would take no more than 7 months using nuclear propulsion.
Neat.
Yeah, as opposed to conventional rocket propulsion up to 3 years, right? So you're looking at 7 months as opposed to 3 years. That's a big drop, dude.
What are your thoughts on the Stargate SG-1 series?
I think that the producers and the brainchild behind Stargate SG-1 was definitely onto something when they came up with the premise that there's this interconnected path of gateways that instantly connects people from point A to point B. I'm astounded by the foresight that the creators of Stargate had, because what Stargate touches upon is the notion of quantum entanglement, right? Stargate touches upon the notion that there is no space. There is me and you, Professor Duskull. We are literally connected. There is no space between us, according to quantum entanglement, because all particles in the universe originated from one point, the singularity, the Big Bang, et cetera, right? So what Stargate SG-1, it builds upon that premise that since there is no space and everything's connected, this ancient civilization somehow figured a way to tap into the interconnectedness of space-time itself. So I fucking love Stargate, dude. I love it, dude. SG-1, dude.
SG-1.
SG-1, 100%.
Well, not seasons 9 through 10.
What's your favorite?
It's just the Stargate Command series that was canceled and just added on to SG-1 in the end.
But you know that I absolutely love the fact that the Stargate series is what introduced me to the concept of quantum entanglement, and it did so indirectly, because after I had seen Stargate SG-1 in its entirety, I coincidentally happened upon a book called the Upanishads, which is an ancient Vedic text from India, written about 2000.
It's one of the Hindu holy texts.
Yeah, and it's actually an atheistic text. It's not even a spiritual text that talks about deities. It talks about atheism. It's one of the earliest atheistic texts ever written, and it predates the Bible about 2,500 years. So I read that book, and then coincidentally enough, I also happened upon a seminar on theoretical physics because one of my colleagues had invited me to go watch the symposium, and I was listening to quantum entanglement. Dude, and it's just this is like a beautiful situation of synchronicity, right? Where before I even learned about that I was going to a symposium, months before that I had read the Upanishads, right? And months before that I had watched the entire series of SG1 all over again because I had seen it when I was a kid and I had rewatched it again for posterity. So this synchronicity brought it all together to the symposium. So I'm sitting there, this professor's talking about quantum entanglement, and he's talking about how everything's connected, and a light bulb just lit up in my head. And I remember when I read on the Upanishads, right? I'm actually going to type it out here in spam. Tat Vam Asi, which means thou art that. You are the computer. I am you. Everything is connected.
What's your favorite iteration of the Care Bears?
I'm not familiar with the Care Bears.
What do you think? Star Wars prequels or Star Wars sequels?
Dude, I fell asleep watching Rogue One, like Star Wars prequels. I don't know what the hell's going on with the new like Star Wars direction that they're taking. I don't know what Disney's doing with trying to, commercialize that franchise. I get it. They're trying to make money off the billions that they paid, fucking George Lucas or whatever. But dude, it's no longer what it once was. It's no longer the original magic that it had.
What about the originals? Originals versus prequels. What do you think?
I feel like the originals had a cohesive narrative that George Lucas was trying to convey, and the new ones are just stringing along this ridiculous narrative that almost reminds me of the Never-Ending Story with the White Dragon, dude. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, dude. Like where's the cohesive narrative now? Like, are you gonna start retconning a whole bunch of shit? Like, are you literally gonna change the history? You're gonna change the history of Boba Fett. You're gonna change the history of, like, come on, like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what to believe. I feel like the Star Wars franchise has been bastardized. Shakespearean dialectics.
So, what do you think about anime?
Well, that's an interesting subject, especially when you consider how ridiculous some of the anime is. One Punch Man. I'm not gonna shit talk it. I'm not gonna. What I'm saying is, it's you can't discount anime because it's a form of art that is attempting to mimic reality, right? But this mimesis of reality is a necessary catharsis because it is through art that we reaffirm our value. It is through art that we somehow find meaning. Without art, we'd be nothing. So we need anime. That's what I'm saying. We need anime. But sometimes anime can be a little bit hyperbolic, like One Punch Man. It goes a little over the top. Like, come on, like One Punch Man. Like, but I get it. I really do. I get it because it's a satire that's commenting on other animes, and it's self-reflexive, and it's a meta dialogue. I understand. I'm not shit talking One Punch Man. I understand that it's a meta satire. Can we call it that? It's a meta level satire that's very aware of itself as a satire. Like, I've seen, breaks on the fourth wall here and there.
Rant about bonobos.
What's up?
I want to hear you rant about bonobos. You know, the close relative of chimpanzees.
Oh my god, dude. Bonobos and chimpanzees. Oh my god. You know what? I feel like the distinction between bonobos and chimpanzees is one that needs to be understood so that we can understand human nature. Because among human beings, we have bonobos and we have the chimpanzees. And let me explain why. The bonobos are the benevolent ones and the chimpanzees are the assholes. Okay? And the difference is, let me explain. Chimpanzees are patriarchal, bonobos are matriarchal. Right? We have a situation where they're genetically almost identical, really. Like they're pretty much the same species. However, they're very, very different in their behavior. And that difference in behavior is what gives animal behaviorists pause to think. They're like, what's going on here? This is interesting. Even though they're pretty much the same, they act so differently. Chimpanzees are territorial, they're murderous, they're known to engage in acts of horror, dude. Like there's been cases where a male chimpanzee has ripped apart a baby chimpanzee in the tribe simply because he got mad. Right? That like it's like that. That's how chimpanzees are. They don't fuck around, dude. They're murderous. And then bonobos are literally the exact polar opposite. Gentle, docile, okay, and matriarchal in terms of their hierarchy. The women are the ones that are in charge. Isn't that interesting? Right? The fact that when you put women in charge, people aren't killing each other. Who would have thunk? Wow. Matriarchy breeds peace. Well, at least in the bonobos, that is. I'm not saying that it breeds peace in humanity, but what I'm saying is in bonobo culture, if you want to call it that, or in bonobo, how should we say, in bonobo groups, matriarchy is what keeps them cohesive. It's what keeps them from being so vicious to each other. And that's really the only distinction that we find between the bonobos and the chimpanzees. That difference between the male being in charge of the chimpanzee to the female being in charge of the bonobos.
So, what's your favorite pizza topping?
Anchovies, dude.
Anchovies.
Yeah.
What do you think of pineapple on pizza?
What the heck, man?
What's wrong with anchovies, dude?
Too salty.
Yeah. Yeah, fish are more sustainable.
Their whole fish on
Really?
your pizza.
Even though we're overfishing?
Fish are dying out like nobody's business, man.
Dude, you know that anchovies aren't that bad when you get over the smell. It's like eating snails, man.
Okay, my other question stands. What do you think of pineapple on pizza?
Here's the thing about pineapples versus anchovies when you put them in the oven. When you put a pineapple in the oven, a succulent, fresh pineapple that you just cut out into the oven, you heat it up, it comes out shriveled, disheveled, with a texture akin to something indescribably nasty. And compared to anchovies, right? When you put an anchovy into the oven, it cooks nicely. It makes it crispy. It makes it crunchy. You know, that's a big difference, dude. You know, eating crunchy fish on top of pizza as opposed to eating some shriveled disgustingness on top of pizza. And besides, anchovies are sustainably farmed. You know, there's fish farms.
Those anchovies probably
Can't
have
you
some-
just put like pineapple on the pizza after you cook it?
Ew.
Yeah, but
okay,
that's
even
that's
worse.
cheating.
That's
That's
even worse than
That's actually cheating.
like. Would you put apple slices on your pizza? Or
You know what?
blueberries? No, you wouldn't, because it's disgusting. Just like putting any fruit on your pizza is disgusting.
I guess you're right.
Didn't those anchovies have subjective conscious experience and the capacity to feel pain, though? And the capacity to desire not to die?
Wow. You've brought up a very compelling point regarding the cognitive capacities of these anchovies, because they did indeed have a central nervous system of sorts, and they did indeed have the ability to feel pain and to maybe feel pleasure. But do we know if they had sufficient cognitive complexity to plan out, to to have a sense of self. We know that only certain organisms can pass the mirror test, so to speak. Only certain organisms can look into a mirror and recognize that what they are looking at is a reflection of themselves. Okay, these are the organisms that we would call have a what's the word for it? It's escaping me now. Hold on, let me think of it. That they have a psychology of mind, right? Other organisms might look at a mirror and they might think that they're looking at another member of their species, and they might start barking at it. They might start trying to play with it, even though it's only a reflection. They're never going to know it's a reflection because they don't have that cognitive complexity to understand their identity or to know that they have an identity. So I would say that these anchovies maybe don't have that philosophy of self. That they don't have that that understanding. Maybe they're just they're almost like living automatons, like living robots.
Hey, I've got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
A man with multiple personality disorder points a gun to their head. Is it suicide?
Infants don't have it, so why don't we just farm human infants?
The reason why human infants fall outside of this category is because human infants have the future potential to develop a psychology of self. Remember, we have to understand that yeah, there are certain developmental stages where the human infant still hasn't reached that capacity to understand that it has a psychology of self because it's still undergoing neuronal development. But again, that's simply a side effect of human fetal development. Okay, because once a baby is born, it's still developing outside the fetus. If the baby would be fully developed when it was born, that baby would need to be carried by the mother for up to 3 years, right? So like it's simply a matter of the fact that once a baby is born, it's still actually a fetus in a way, in a very weird way. It's a fetus because it's still developing, right? So you have to give it the chance to develop its psychology of self.
Wait, but aren't
yeah, what's up?
teenagers still developing?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Wait,
But
so are they considered fetuses?
no, the psychology of self usually fully develops after the age of 5. By the age of 5, the psychology of self is cemented, and
you
and
can-
and the gender as well. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is you have to allow the child to get to that point so that it has a psychology of self, and preventing that child from reaching that point would be monstrous because what you're doing is you're impeding human potential, and that goes against the tenets of humanism.
Still, that
aren't you
fails.
also inhibiting the human potential to commit evil?
What do you mean?
I mean, it could go both ways.
You're
inhibiting
right.
them-
You're right. Like, let's say if it was Hitler, right? Let's say it was Hitler as a 4-year-old. You know, like if you kind of snuff him out, then you just prevented genocide. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But even then, in that situation, you never know what that child is going to do. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you have to think, okay, hopefully they go committing good. You can't be doing some sort of minority report situation where you do a brain scan on them and you say, okay, you're a psychopath, so that means that you're not fit to live. No, dude, even the psychopaths deserve life. you know, but just they need to be monitored very, very carefully, you know. But yeah, they still deserve life though.
So I've got a question. It's off topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mostly because, all right, is meat murder?
Okay, that question deserves an answer far longer than I can give with my current constraints because I have to get going. But I'll definitely get back to you guys. All right, I have to take my dog for a walk, but I'll get back to you on that question. Take it easy, guys.